Welcome back to Viewpoint. Tonight we're looking at philanthropy. We've heard about some philanthropists who've been very generous towards our community in the past, but there are also some Gibraltar-based philanthropists who are active today.
It's interesting because Gibraltar has its own indigenous philanthropic and charitable tradition. You know, John McIntosh is one very good example, the best example perhaps locally. But there are others. But what we have seen in Gibraltar in the last 20 years is a huge number of new industries coming to Gibraltar, in particular the online gaming and financial services industries, that have brought people from outside Gibraltar to our shores, and they have prospered. And they have therefore made Gibraltar their home, certainly they made Gibraltar their centre of their business activities, and they want to give something back, as entrepreneurs often do.
Can you give us an insight into the minds of high net worth individuals, clients perhaps, of yours, without going into specifics, why they approach philanthropy? Is it purely a tax thing?
I would answer that by saying that there are many drivers. There's no one answer, that's clear. But this very successful entrepreneur, I think, realizes that that they've been fortunate. They've been the environment has enabled them to be successful, and there's a need in one form or another to give back to the less fortunate. And I think that's, in broad terms, I think does cover many cases. I think individual experiences, etc., will, I think maybe direct your philanthropy one way or another. And clearly it's all about the emotional part of the individual, driving you. I mean, it has to be driven by certainly by the heart, so therefore I think it's a very personal sort of experience.
Britain and Gibraltar are relatively well-off places, with a standard of living that far exceeds many other countries.
Right.
Are we generous enough in the support that we offer these less well-off places?
Well, I can't speak for Gibraltar because I don't know the circumstances. I know I would agree with you on the statement you made. That's comparatively well off, yes, as is the United Kingdom. I can speak to the United Kingdom, and I will say that the people in the United Kingdom, the general public, are extremely generous. The Ebola campaign, 32 million raised from the general public, who gave. When people see a worthwhile cause, when they see people suffering, and when they know, and this is very important, when they know that money will be spent responsibly, not just frittered away and go into the pockets of some foreign leader who's going to build a hotel in Switzerland and live on the profits, when they see that it's going to go actually to the need that's there, they will be generous, and the people in Britain are remarkably generous, in my opinion.
I mean, Gibraltar, I don't have to say that we know that Gibraltarians by nature are very generous. Philanthropy, what it does is actually take it a step further. It's not just the giving, it's giving by thinking about the strategic effects that it can have. And our location is also quite useful. We have Africa on one side, we're in Europe, so those kind of things actually work in our favor. And what we want to do is make Gibraltar a philanthropy-friendly jurisdiction. And, it's a process. It's not going to happen immediately, but these are the kind of steps one wants to put to make that a reality.
It's not just a question of giving back for altruistic reasons. Very often it's structured within a concern about succession and planning for the future. They don't want children and grandchildren to inherit massive fortunes, which then will make them, frankly, indulgent and not productive. It's a little what happened with Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation. Gates had a huge amount of money. He decided, well, I don't want this to be inherited in a conventional way. I'll set something aside for my family, but the vast majority of my wealth goes towards philanthropic and good causes. And in Gibraltar, we're seeing on a different scale, not as huge as that, but not insignificant, people who are coming into wealth, both non-Gibraltarians and Gibraltarians, who want to give. And the big thing about philanthropy is that it is more structured giving. There's a big tradition among ordinary people of giving spontaneously and almost impulsively in reaction to events. But philanthropy is much more about thinking in the medium to long term about what you might want to achieve. And as advisors to clients who want to have their money put to good use, having the skills as to how that is done meaningfully and done efficiently is very important.
Money, people often say money is the matter. No, money isn't the root. Money can be a very great blessing. I've nothing against money. I'd like more of it. But the love of it. If I'm going to position myself and say, right, my sole objective is to make money and I'll be ruthless and I won't give a damn about other people, then I think I'd say probably adjust your sights a bit, because it's not going to do you any good. You know, you're going to be impoverished within. But to have a reasonable ambition and to say, it'd be very nice to have enough to live on, or even a bit more to give away. What's wrong with that?
There are incentives like tax benefits, etc., gift aid, which actually leverage on whatever you give, and it's something which we think is very important to giving. I think clearly you give £1 and you can actually end up contributing £1.30 to any charity, then I think clearly it's in everybody's interest to make sure that they do benefit from these incentives. Ultimately, it's rare, I would say, that the driver is tax. I think it's more about ensuring that you're optimizing the opportunities, but if you think about tax, I mean, these things could be distractions to the ultimate. I think sometimes you end up maybe spending too much time focusing on structure, what should I do, etc., and you just maybe tying your hands too much, whereas what you have to do is really have, I think, as open an opportunity as possible to support causes locally, internationally, and ensure that you do take advantage of any benefits that may exist out there, which will just increase the impact of your initiative.
Well, I think some of the nicest people I've known have been very wealthy, but they've been very generous indeed, and they've set up their own trusts. I mean, there is a lot of cynicism around, isn't there? Some people say, "Oh, he's only doing it for this, that, the other, all sorts of reasons." You don't know the reasons. You don't know why X does it. What are his motives? But if you can only assume that his or her motives are good motives, and he's having a good result, or she is having a good result with the charity, what can possibly be wrong with that? If people are doing it clearly, for motives that are less than worthy, well, good luck to them. At the end of the day, they'll come unstuck, most likely. So I'm a great supporter. I don't believe, as I said, I just repeat, I don't believe wealth in itself is wrong, but I do believe John Major is right. For once in his life.
So really it is about commitment. It is not about having a lot of money to give away, and it really is about thinking, believing in objectives that I think are ambitious, but where ultimately I think you feel that there is something that is worth giving time, money, or whatever you have to give to, right?
I don't think there's a duty or a commitment in terms of a percentage, but certainly the sort of link, if you like, between capitalism and philanthropy, that sort of engaged debate is something that needs to happen, and it's something that we are keen that people just engage in the discussion.
One of the things that we know is that you need to find good partners to have the most impact possible, and so working together, bringing together wealth managers, investors, and to start thinking through the different problems there might be, to bring in government, civil service, other stakeholders from the community, I think is a crucial starting point, and clearly it has started here. So I think the real lesson, I suppose, is to stick with it, to stick at it. It's not easy stuff. We're dealing with some really ingrained problems in society, and the one we deal with is the attainment gap, and it's been around for years, and it will probably be around for years to come. But what can we do in our time frame to minimise these problems? What is it that we can do to actually make a difference within society? And if everyone can come together, I think we're much more likely to find a solution than if we try and plough our own lonely furrows. We're not going to necessarily get to the destination we want.
I set up the Alwani Trust Foundation, and Alwani Trust and Alwani Foundation 18 years ago, and the reason was that we wanted to give back to community part of what we have been receiving. This year actually we have been celebrating 80th anniversary since we started business. And I started 18 years ago, and since then we've been trying to make donations to worthy charities in Gibraltar. We receive applications, then we trustees sit down and we choose the ones we think that need urgent assistance, and we choose accordingly.
At EY, corporate responsibility, social responsibility is very much high in the agenda. This year, we took it a step further. We wanted to make a difference. We wanted to do something different. And it was put to us that maybe we could contribute by actually giving a book to every single child of a certain age. Clearly, we couldn't do it to the whole. And there is this author, Anne Bogie, who is resident in Gibraltar, who's just written a book for children. And we partnered with her, and we decided, through the help of the Minister for Education and the Department of Education, we went to see them, and we actually decided to buy a book to every single preschool child in Gibraltar. So we went around through all the schools. The author came with us. She actually read the books to the children. It was incredibly well received. In all my years in doing things like this for the community and so on, it's probably been the highlight of all these years, seeing the children getting up, coming up to us and getting the book, and so proud of having the book. It was absolutely amazing. And the response in Main Street and the streets in Gibraltar and in social media has been absolutely brilliant.
I mean, we do lots of different initiatives, and our philanthropic activity, if you like, is run through the PJ Isola Foundation, which was a foundation created in commemoration of the late Peter Issa, who's my grandfather. So I think it's interesting. Our approach has been to engage, everyone within the firm, from the partners all the way down to everyone, all of the employees, in small fundraising initiatives. We typically raise money throughout the course of a year, and then seek to identify a local charity or a local cause, or sometimes not even a local cause, but an international cause, which is typically close to the heart of one of the employees. So the ideas are sort of pitched to the trustees of the foundation. We act as a sort of the fundraiser, if you like, through that foundation, and then make attributions and allocations to causes that we connect with. That's been our approach.
I think Hassan's, like many other firms in Gibraltar, is always very keen to respond to philanthropic requirements and demands when they come along. We obviously have money we set aside for philanthropy. That's probably the least important aspect of what we do. A lot of people, partners and others within Hassan's, have their own private initiatives, and that's true of the whole of Gibraltar. A lot of people do things as individuals or as groups, and we certainly encourage that. We're particularly proud to be part of this forum because it's bringing together a collection of firms, and we think that we're able to build on that. We think that there is much that can be done to infect, in the best sense of the word, or perhaps better said, inspire a broader constituency to get involved in this repositioning of Gibraltar that we think is possible and desirable.
Well, ActionAid's been in existence for around 40 years now. We work currently with around 20 million families in 40 different countries. Big organisation, but we were actually born from child sponsorship, from linking up families here and elsewhere with families in the developing world, with the world's poorest families. I think to give families that have had a little bit of a better start in life an opportunity to understand perhaps how other people live. That was 40 years ago, and we've grown from that. That's still in our DNA. So what we try and do when we work with supporters is get them as close as we can to our programs. Those programs focus predominantly on education, on empowering and educating women specifically, on disease prevention, on emergencies is a big focus of ours. So the most current case being in Ebola in West Africa, we're very involved with the communities there trying to prevent the spread of that deadly virus. We also work a little bit on climate change and resilience and land rights and food, giving people enough to eat so they can actually live a healthy life. We've been very fortunate actually. We've had years and years of support from hundreds of people in Gibraltar. We're very lucky to have the footprint here that we do, and they're some of our most loyal supporters, as I say, in many cases generations. They started 30 years ago for their children, sponsoring another child, and here we are today. So it's a great pleasure to come across and meet with as many of those supporters as I can, and a great pleasure to be involved in this event as well.
I think in Consumer Gibraltar, the mission statement is to create a lasting benefit for the community, and from the philanthropist point of view, it's a thank you from them because they made their money in Gibraltar, and they see the potential. They love Gibraltar. I mean, they see the potential in Gibraltar, and they want people to achieve high. So, it might not always look like a cohesion between the projects, but actually what we're trying to do in terms of the community projects, whether it's giving people an excellent scholarship to try and get them to go to the top universities, and also to be people who will come back and give possibly to the community. We can't tie them down to that, but we hope for that.
Well, I think it would be too ambitious to say I'm a philanthropist, but when I left Gibraltar, my wife and I were very keen to set up a charitable project here, particularly because the children of Gibraltar struck us as marvellous people, and we felt we would like to leave something which would support disadvantaged children who aren't as well off, as it were, as others, and give them a chance to have some venture training, either in Britain or in Spain. So in my last 2 weeks, we made an appeal. We put our own money in, we asked others to put money in, and the Chief Minister of the day, Sir Peter Caruana, was generous enough to say the government would match whatever we raised, and so $250,000 was raised. It's like a kind of endowment fund. We draw on the income each year, and something around 13 to 15 children a year benefit in the summer holidays from venture training. We get a regular report on what's happening, and we're delighted to have this commitment with Gibraltar.
In a recent interview, you said, "My life has unraveled in an unusual way. I've learned a lot and I'm still learning. And while I could have done better, I did my best. As we will hear today, the good work continues."
First of all, I was in an underground cell with no natural light whatsoever. And then I was moved to be in bombed out buildings, again with no natural light, chained to the wall for 23 hours and 50 minutes a day. No books or papers, no companionship. 3 meals a day, very basic meals. Large lot of interrogation in the first year, accompanied by being beaten a bit, culminating in a mock execution, which, as you can see, it was a mock execution. I'm here. So that didn't take place.
How did you manage to keep going and find the strength to keep going during those 5 years?
One of the things that I often say to people who have experienced someone in their family being taken is that when that experience happens, you discover within yourself resources you didn't know you had. See, in my case, I had no conversation with anybody for years, and I had to develop my own mental capacity. I didn't let that die. I mean, I wrote my first book in my head without pencil and paper. I had no pencil and paper. I did a lot of mental arithmetic. Some people have said, because you have a faith, a belief, did that help? Well, it did, but not in the way that many people would expect. I mean, I'm not the sort of person to wear faith on my sleeve. But I could say in the face of my captors, you have the power to break my body, and you've tried, because I was knocked about. You have the power to bend my mind, and you've tried, because I was interrogated. But my soul is not yours to possess. Now, you can debate forever and ever what you mean by soul. I meant the sum total of the person that I am. And do what you're worst, you're not going to capture me completely. And that very, very simple statement was enough to enable me to maintain hope. And I think if in situations of extremity you can maintain hope, or you can be surrounded by people who will enable you to maintain hope, even in the direst of circumstances, I have puzzled long and hard as to what can be done by individuals such as myself and around the world in the face of such dreadful situations. I've concentrated this morning on one extreme situation, but there are thousands of situations of poverty, of need, of distress. What can be done? Well, I felt this, that what has to happen in a number of situations is that individuals have to put the past in the past and be prepared to meet each other and try and start afresh. What an idealistic statement that is. Of course it is. And can it possibly take place? Well, I think it can.
Well, actually, he was excellent. After the talk he gave, I went to speak with him and shake hands with him to tell him that now I'll be able to say that I shook hands with a kind person like him.
And as you've heard today, having someone of the calibre of Terry Waite opening proceedings today and engaging on such an emotional and current theme, was absolutely unbelievable.
I've always been involved in humanitarian work. I mean, ever since I was a student, working with the homeless. When I came out of captivity, my job was held open for me at Lambeth Palace, and I said, I'm not going to take that up. I've always had a salaried job right across life. And at that point I said, no, let me get on with what I feel I ought to do in terms of the humanitarian field and charitable field, and earn my own living by writing and lecturing. So I don't take a penny from any of the charities, don't take any salary from them. What I do is I keep myself going by lecturing and writing, and I've done so for the last 20 years.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, last year we had John Major. This year I was really delighted that Terry Waite, who I've met before and who's come to Gibraltar quite often and is a very good friend of Gibraltar, came over because he had a very warm story to tell from his own experience, but how that relates to the issue of philanthropy, raising money, and how every situation, whether it's people and hostages and their families, or whether you're talking about children in India, whatever you're talking about, there are really human people, human situations, and there are people, and that's what people tend to forget, when you're talking about these things.
I have puzzled long and hard as to what can be done by individuals such as myself and around the world in the face of such dreadful situations. I've concentrated this morning on one extreme situation, but there are thousands of situations of poverty, of need, of distress. What can be done? Well, I felt this, that what has to happen in a number of situations is that individuals have to put the past in the past and be prepared to meet each other and try and start afresh. What an idealistic statement that is. Of course it is. And can it possibly take place? Well, I think it can.
I think what we need to do next is start answering that what next question. It's good to have a conversation, it's good to start thinking it through. Now what comes next? What is the more that Gibraltar can do, that its organisations can do, that its people can do?
Sometimes I've argued that there are far too many charities. You look at the Charity Commission, the boom, 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 boom. There's a lot to be said for some of them getting together. So yes, organisation is essential.
Actually, I've come here today because I'm a very hungry person, not for food, but for knowledge. So I've come here to learn, and I think I've learned quite a lot from what I heard today.
And it just shows the way that a topic like philanthropy, in fact coming just after the literary festival, how Gibraltar has embraced those kind of themes and shows our development as a people.
There's scope, I think, to bring that learning and that approach back more than we do, and I think it's been really exciting today to work with others and debate how we can do this better, not just as charities but as funders as well. how we can have this honest conversation and make the biggest possible difference to lives across the world.
There's something about the human species that when the situation becomes as it has become politically in many of these places, behave in a most appalling way. And someone said to me last night, after hearing about this latest atrocity, I'm almost ashamed to be human. And I can understand that.
Will we see Gibraltar becoming some sort of centre of excellence for philanthropy?
Well, we hope so. That would be, our best ambition. One thing we've discovered a few things. Firstly, we've discovered is that it is a very fragmented area. I say industry. There are many people, many charities doing a lot of good work, but they don't talk to each other, and therefore there is great inefficiency, as opposed to a normal business environment where inefficiencies tend to be, spitted out because the economic model works to make inefficient models, inefficient systems sort of redundant. It doesn't happen in charity and philanthropy work. So a lot of effort is going in which is being wasted. So there's a fragmentation problem.
Yeah, I think it was very impressive today. The audience were made up of a lot of professional wealth advisors, etc. And that's really good that they're able to attract that many people. And I thought what the purpose was really to help them understand some of the key issues around philanthropy and social investment so that when they're talking to their clients, they have some background. And I thought that was covered really well today because there was panel discussions, there were presentations, and a little bit of humor, which is okay.
Secondly, there's a problem of cross-border inefficiency. You would have thought within places like the European Union, there are settled rules on whether a Frenchman can, for example, donate to a Dutch charity or a Dutchman to an Italian charity and get the same tax reliefs and the same breaks. It doesn't happen.
Well, I always like to keep in touch with what's happening in Gibraltar. I feel a particular responsibility as being a member of the House of Lords, and from time to time the issue of Gibraltar is raised either in debate or by means of a question, but very often I and colleagues are working behind the scenes, and so the chance to come here was a chance also to get myself well briefed on all the latest developments, to talk to the governor, to talk to the chief minister, to talk to other people here, including Sir Peter Caruana, who's a very experienced elder statesman of Gibraltar, and the Commissioner of Police, the Mayor, the Speaker. It's very important to me to be able to keep in touch. I was here last year, but you need to keep yourself in the picture as to what is happening because the situation changes, and it means you can be more helpful to Gibraltar when you're back at home.
So whilst we come quite late to this game, what we realize it's actually quite uncharted. There is a lot to be done. And in this respect, Europe lags well behind the United States. The leader in the world has always been the United States when it comes to philanthropy. They have a deeper, more sophisticated tradition. The UK is probably the most sophisticated on the European side, but there's a lot to do. And Gibraltar is able, we're in time, to play a part in what are those changes and hopefully to carve for ourselves some space based on our geography, on our professional services, on our cultural mix. We're in time to create a space for ourselves which is quite unique.
I'm confident that this is an initiative with a long life. We have a 3-year cycle, that's our commitment. Next year will be the third conference as such. We have a year from now till then, where I'm pretty sure we're going to be investing a lot of time to ensure that we pave the way for the next stage.
Regardless of race, religion, creed, colour, we're one human species. And part of the aim of any philanthropic endeavour is to enable us to be more truly and fully human. Thank you very much.
Giving back, the subject of this week's Viewpoint. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for tonight, but please do join us at the same time next week for another Viewpoint. From all of us at Broadcasting House, thanks for watching and good night.